Magnus Carlsen is on his way to the game against Aydin Suleymanli. And there he says hi to Jordan in the adjoining team.
And now it's time to
Aydin
start
is a young
round number
Azeri
10.
talent.
I
He's
wish you
2005 born,
endgame
21
with
years
an
of
handshake
age, and very
and start the
likely
clock.
to be the next big thing from Azerbaijan. And on the adjoining board, you can see already Vishy Anand is here, and Wesley So comes in. It's like intense because rounds start one after the other, and there you can see Sindaro versus Anand. We'll bring you this game on our channel too. A crazy battle between two amazing players. But let's shift our focus to the main game here, which is between Aydin Suleymanli and Magnus Carlsen. We go a handshake, and Aydin opens the game with pawn to d4. And Magnus, well, he always takes his time before the game begins, and here he was a bit worried about his teammates entering in, but they're all here. And Magnus did lose the last round to Javokir Sindarov. Before that, he lost to Shan Sargsyan yesterday and Arjun Erigaisi, so he wants to win. He wants to redeem himself. He goes for the Dutch defense, pawn to f5. You know, there are players who kind of mellow down when they lose a few games. Magnus is one of them who kind of becomes even more aggressive. He wants to beat his opponent, he wants to trample them. That's why he goes for the Dutch defense, but it's not the most common opening at top level chess, and Aydin chooses the most solid setup against Dutch, which is the Fianchetto system. Magnus pushes his pawn to d6. This is known as the Leningrad system of Dutch, where you put your bishop on g7. And Magnus plays pawn to c6. This idea is to put the pawn on a5, knight a6, sometimes goes to c7. If you get a successful e5, you are happy. So Aydin goes bishop to f4. He keeps an eye on the e5 square. One of the reasons why it's difficult to play against the Dutch defense is that you spend a lot of time preparing against openings like Queen's Gambit declined and stuff. You haven't spent that much time against the Dutch defense. So when Magnus plays it, it's actually a bit tricky. You don't know how to respond. h6 played by Magnus. He wants to go g5 perhaps. And Aydin pushes his pawn in the center. Now d5 is an excellent move, making space for the knight to come to d4, and so Magnus immediately shuts that down with pawn to c5. Yes, the d4 square is no longer available, but the e6 square is now weakened. He plays h4. It also has repercussions because the g4 square has been weakened a bit. Magnus brings his knight to c7. He would be looking to play a6 b5 on the queen side. a3 played by Aydin. Is he going for b4? That would be interesting. If Aydin himself is trying to play on the queen side, knight jumps to h5. You don't really want to give up this bishop, do you? I mean, you can play queen d2. It's not like a impossible move, but usually you want to keep. But Aydin is like, okay, Magnus, take it if you want, because if you take it, I'll take with my e pawn, opening up the e file. Magnus maneuvering his knights. He goes to e8. Now this is very tricky position. Aydin plays on the queen side b4. Magnus stops everything with pawn to b6. And now the knight here. Where does it go? He brings his knight back to e1. And the knight is going to d3 perhaps. Bishop a6, eyeing the pawn on c4, forcing Aydin to play b5. If he plays it, Magnus would be happy, because it kind of would close the position a bit, and Duda has won his game already against Gunay Mamadzada, which is what Magnus and Aydin both looked at. So that's 1-0 for WR Chess. Always a good feeling when your team member wins. Queen e2 played. And Aydin doesn't want to commit his pawn to b5. He first plays queen e2. You know, when the pawns are on e3 and g3, I'm always afraid that g5 would trap my bishop somehow. But right now it's not so easy to engineer that. Knight comes to f6. Magnus is actually taking over. He's already having a great position. He does that. He does that to his opponents. He's able to understand where each of his pieces belong. Meanwhile, Aydin is kind of struggling with what he should do next. He finds this plan, which is to go. Well, he's thinking about it. Bishop f3. Attacking the knight here. Maybe king g2 comes up. And Magnus brings his king to h7. Well, actually, the g2 square was not freed up for the king. It was for the knight to go to g2. So the knight can actually come here, and if you take, I'll take back with my knight. That's a very, very nice idea. And now e4 becomes a possibility because this is defended. Knight jumps back to d7, but all of a sudden the structure is now ruined. Bishop takes h5. First goes b5. Bishop comes back. I mean, we could very well take this pawn, but Aydin may be also interested in just opening up the position with pawn to e4. In one move, Magnus has made his position so bad. Like knight d7 going back. It's just not called for. e4. And you can see that this happens when things are just not flowing your way. Knight takes f4. He takes back with the knight. Now the knight is coming to e6. Knight e5. And bishop goes back to g2. Aydin starting to play quickly. He has 3 minutes on the clock. Pawn to a6 played. He takes on f5. And now knight e6 is a big idea. Magnus can take back. He takes back with the bishop. Knight e6. Boom. If you take here, d6 opens up the bishop. The king is weak. It's terrible position. So Magnus says, okay, Aydin, take my rook if you want. If you take here, I'm happy to play this position. I think I have compensation. Well, a tough decision for Aydin because sitting against you is Magnus Carlsen. He's given you an exchange and he's asking you to take it. And you decline it. You play f4, knight jumps to g4. And now, take here or not take here is the question. He actually goes and takes on a6. So if rook a6, now he wants to take on f8 because then the structure is spoiled. I mean, the coordination is spoiled because of bishop f8. Rook a6 taken by Magnus. Knight f8. Aydin takes it and goes knight to b5. He has just 27 seconds on the clock. Magnus has 2 minutes 47 seconds. It's not just the fact that Aydin has an extra exchange. He also has positional weaknesses to attack. Magnus is playing super quick. He's trying to push Aydin on the clock. The young Azeri player, well, he needs to keep his calm. It's never easy when you face a player like Magnus. Bishop e4, a wonderful move. Trying to trade off some more pieces. King g2, another excellent move. Slowly and steadily he's coming back. Knight h6. Magnus fighting on the light squares. The bishop, he keeps the bishop now. He's like, both your pieces want the f5 square and I'm not trading. King g7 played. It's not so easy to break through here for Aydin. Because Magnus has built some kind of a fortress, especially with his bishop on f6, which is kind of, you can't oppose it. Knight check. King g2. Magnus comes back. A calm draw for by him. Aydin has 20 seconds only. You could potentially get tempted to take the draw here. Aydin says sorry, no draw. Rook to a5 played. Fight on. Fight on. And now, where is he going with his bishop? He goes bishop e4 again. Magnus gives a check. Oh, this is getting nasty now. The queen, the bishop, the knight. And you can see Aydin visibly worried. He's not confident. He goes king g1. Magnus can actually sacrifice an exchange. Rook b5, cb5, queen b5. With this bishop then coming to d4. That can get very, very tricky. knight coming to g4. And this is actually the moment where Magnus can take over. No, he comes back, bishop f5. He's hesitating. This is not very normal for Magnus. Usually he doesn't think twice before giving up such material. Bishop takes f5. Aydin is happy to trade. And now Magnus thinking whether he should take with the queen, with the knight. And yeah, maybe now he just saw that rook b5 was possible. Perhaps he takes, queen takes f5. Where does white get his play? He goes king g2. Well, I think Aydin's first order of the day is to survive here. Bishop h4 is a threat. Ooh, Magnus has given a queen trade. Aydin takes it. H takes g4. Interesting decision, because now the knight gets a very good square on f5. And Aydin plays rook to e3. Knight jumps to f5. The rook comes to d3 square. King f7 played. And white goes king f1. Rook a4. Somehow it's difficult for white to make progress, but you know, if the knight can somehow come back, rooks can start entering via the b file. That could mean something. He goes king e2, bishop goes to b2, and Aydin plays rook to c2. He brings his bishop back to f6. At this point, it feels like it's super difficult for white to do anything, because maybe he has some knight c7 ideas to attack here. Bishop goes to g7, and you can, but king d3, there's g3 hanging. That's the problem. Aydin goes rook to d3, bishop f6, king d1. Maybe he's going like this route. Bishop d4 played. Well, there's no entry point here. There's knight e3 check, where you could potentially lose an exchange, but Aydin takes on d4, and now if you take cd4, that could be weakening. So take with the knight perhaps. He takes with the pawn. Magnus taking some wild decisions here. Decisions that maybe he will regret. Knight e3 check is a threat now. King goes to e2. And now the knight comes to e3, attacking the rook and the pawn on c4. Rook b2 played. Well, knight takes c4 is bad because of rook to b4, and it gets traded. But rook takes c4 is possible. Magnus can take on c4, and he should be fine. He's going for it. Yes, he takes on c4. The position is now even. Rook takes b6 if you take. In fact, that could get very risky after knight d5. So rook b4, maybe trading off the rooks is an idea. He goes rook b4. Good move by Aydin with just 3 seconds on the clock. And rook c2 check, rook d2. This was a mistake here. He should have taken and played knight f5 or knight d5, and there were drawing chances. But rook c2 check, rook d2. Suddenly Magnus cannot trade this. Take. This is really good because d4 is hanging. So rook c1 he plays. But now just rook takes d4. What is Magnus's plan? I mean, rook d4. If you play rook b d4, knight f5, and maybe g3 is hanging. But rook d d4. He takes here knight f5 and rook d3. A simple move. Check. King e1. And now b6 is hanging and everything's falling. It's as if Magnus is just not able to think clearly here. And Aydin finding so many good resources under time pressure. Rook b3 is even now calmly defending everything. And this is the moment where Magnus, I think, realizes he's messed it up. He's now trying to open up the position, which is clearly not the best in his interest, because you know the rooks are super dangerous. They need open files, and they are going to completely enter in. King f1 is the idea, to evict the rook from g2, and then b6 is hanging. King comes up, rook c1, might as well take another pawn. Rook takes b6. He takes, rook takes b6, check, king e1, rook a2. Well, the position is now utterly lost. All that Aydin has to do is keep his nerves. He's going to beat the greatest player of all time. He's going to beat the world number one. And this would mean a lot to him. King d1, rook g2, rook comes back. Fantastic calmness. There's no need to hurry. This is one of the important rules. d5. Whenever you're winning, do not hurry. And he gives a check. King goes back to f7. And Aydin, does he take the pawn on d5? But then g3 is hanging. Some decisions to make. Should he push the pawn a4, a5, a6? What should he do? Whoa, calmly plays rook c3, threatening a mate. Rook takes g3, taken by Magnus. But now check to the king. Knight e7. And okay, if you play rook b7, then rook e3. These are the moments where you have to calculate precisely, and there is a very precise way. Aydin finds it. h5, what a move. And the point is, if gh5, f5, f6 becomes a threat. Otherwise, the pawn is simply running. In fact, h takes g6 is a massive threat here. Oh, Magnus has his hand on his head. f5 played. Rook f3, attacking the pawn, but he misses rook e6 idea. He did take into consideration f6 idea. Oh, he doesn't even play rook f3. He actually lifted the rook. Magnus saw rook e6. He resigns. Aydin Suleymanli beats Magnus Carlsen, and you could see that reaction on his face was that of huge relief. Look at him there. And Rustam Kazimjanov comes in. There are tears in his eyes. Rauf Mamedov is there. He's so happy. Well, it's a big moment. Kazimjanov is perhaps the coach of Aydin. I mean, not here, but in general. And Aydin Suleymanli scores one of the big victories of his chess career. He beats Magnus Carlsen. He was shaky in the game, but at the key moments he kept his calm, he kept his nerves, and he did it. And look at the joy on the face of everyone. This is a life-changing moment for Aydin Suleymanli. You can basically bank on him to keep growing as a player, because such are the moments that one needs. And as he heads out, Hans Niemann shakes hands with him, congratulates him. He's clearly happy that Suleymanli managed to beat Magnus Carlsen. Fourth consecutive loss for Magnus. Arjun, Shant, Sindarov, and now Aydin. When was the last time we saw this happening to the GOAT?
Freedom begins with a choice. In 2008, we made ours. Freedom knows no borders. Step by step, we became part of the global financial system. In 2019, we went public on NASDAQ. In 2024, we built a digital ecosystem. Fintech, lifestyle, telecom, everything comes together in one unified digital space. Today, freedom is a system that shapes markets. $2 billion in annual revenue, $9.3 billion market capitalization, 11 million customers, 11,300 plus employees, 230 offices worldwide. Freedom begins with a choice, and every day we make it again. Freedom Holding Corp. One ecosystem, many possibilities.